Hey everybody. Um, Let me know if you're hearing me okay and we're live. I think we're live. It says we're live. Okay, okay. Hey everybody. Let me know if you're hearing me. There we go. Yeah, we're definitely live. Okay, everybody. So a lot going on this week. It just seems to ramp up week after week, more and more things going on all the time. So, obviously, this is the Lost and Found Bin. I'm SMQ. My co-host, my cohort, Chick is with us, and we were just talking off air, just real quick about it's in the title, but just for real quick, we wanted to talk about that article that came out last night in case anybody missed it. I'm going to paste it in the chat here for everybody. Um, yeah, they're going to be doing further crackdowns on YouTube for anything fringe, anything considered unacceptable. Hey, dead GPK, just anything like that. And what are your initial thoughts? Were you able to read the article?
Yeah, so yesterday I saw that was posted that YouTube was saying that anything that they considered wrong, that they were just going to make it so that it doesn't come up in recommendations, you can't find it. And one of the examples they gave was like alternative cures to serious disease and anything to do with like 9/11, alternative theories about that. There's a couple of other things, but it very much seemed to be around the truth community. And of course, it was a big concern because they said anything that's wrong, we're going to single out for this. Well, that's anything that's wrong by their standards. And of course, that's going to come, into our community because they're going to say, I don't remember it that way. So that's wrong information, about the Mandela effect. If they're not affected, they're just going to say that we're wrong, much like every unaffected person says, oh, you're remembering it wrong. That's what I expect from this is, that we'll be caught up in this wave of quote unquote cleansing the disinfo. And it's not disinfo, it's just not useful information to them personally, but to other people who are dealing with this, it's very important information.
I totally agree. Well said. And there's a different, I think the Mandela effect world and our community in our world, we're a bit different than other truther factions that I've noticed because I watch it all, man. And the difference with us is these are more, introspective kind of things, and we're trying to understand the world around us and our place in the world around us. And that's really kind of a staple of what it is to be an ME, particularly for this crew and this channel. Hey, what's up, everybody? Glad to see you here. And what makes us different from other channels is, yes, a lot of the things we say, if you haven't experienced it yourself, you sound insane. The other channels, though, and the other conspiracy theories, and I'm not going to get specific, a lot of them, they have to be accusatory in tone towards. There has to be an event that happens that is that they don't approve of, whatever egregious event that may be, and I'm not going to get specific about it, but there has to be someone you point to and say, aha, this particular person committed an act that's unacceptable, or this person lied here and there and is a public official and whatever. And the Mandela effect community is talking about the nature of reality, and we're almost akin to even the Christian MEs that won't admit it. We're more kind of spiritually based, and they probably would consider us kind of cheesy new agey kind of thing. And we know we're not. We're dealing with something very serious here. But I just want to make that differentiate why, and it dawned on me yesterday. I always thought we were a bit different, the weirdos off in the corner of the truth movement, and then it hit me why it was yesterday, particularly when they were set to, and then with my private video, my unlisted video that most of you, I'm happy to say, you send it out for, you send out for it, then I send it back to you and you've looked at the video. There's a real difference with the kind of content we make and the kind of content that I mentioned in the video. And it is more introspective what we all talk about, because a Mandela effect is, like we've talked about it, it's a very personal spiritual experience, and it's a realignment of your understanding of reality. And there's no finger pointing here. There's no agency other than possibly the arch enemy CERN, perhaps. But even that, I argue sometimes against that. So but anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way real quick, because obviously it's the big news, it's everywhere. All the content creators are talking about it, particularly the conspiracy content creators are talking about it. But it's just something, it was worth 6 minutes into this. It was worth mentioning. And do you have anything you want to add to that, Chick?
Just I guess how disappointed I am. Looking through it again, I was kind of expecting that these kind of things would come up with regards to YouTube, because I saw a while ago that they were talking about making YouTube into a subscription service like Netflix. So they
Uh-huh.
were only going to concentrate on their big YouTube stars and making you pay for like these episodes that they do, these really cheesy, it's almost like the Disney Channel, like episodes of I don't even know what kind of shows that they have just exclusively here on YouTube. And for anyone that's like old school YouTube community, they know that's not what this site is about. And it's kind of disappointing to have seen it gone this way. And yeah, we are going to have to find alternatives if they just shut the Mandela Effect community down. I mean, as it is already, when I log out and I go to search Mandela Effect, like pretending that I'm a newly affected person, I don't know the community, I don't know the channels, the top results you get, a lot of them is, the big channels that aren't really Mandela affected, that did it for clicks, that, never made another Mandela effect video again. Or there's, channels where it's just you're not getting into the real Mandela effect community. So it's already very difficult to find unless you were there a year ago or 2 years ago and found the channels as you were going along. It's very difficult to find the really good channels. And even our biggest channels, like Moneybags, I don't think he comes up on the first page at all of search
Yeah.
results. So it's kind of like we're already being hit by this, but I just kind of expect it to be more extreme if they do single us out. Now, hopefully, we're so fringe and we're so weird and so niche to the usual person that maybe they wouldn't even think of us. Maybe they'll be too busy tackling, political channels or like political truth or fringe, whatever that's way more controversial to them, and that they're, going to try and get that more hidden away. But I am concerned, is particularly by the language of anything that's wrong. We're going to get rid of it, because the most painful thing is we know we're not wrong, but in this set of circumstances, the people around us are just not going to believe that, no matter how much proof we give to them. So kind of our backs are up against the wall with the Mandela effect. Either you do remember something different or you don't, and that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah. And then again, it gets back to, and I'm not trying to co-opt any kind of Christian language or anything like that. And I'm certainly not trying to turn this into a cult, but it is something that is faith driven, faith based oftentimes, because it's an experience that you'll have personally, and it's hard to explain to other people. And yet there will also be these, like the tip of the spear, I call it, where it's in your face. And you guys, you don't know. I'm still getting, it's died off a little bit because I think my channel's being throttled, but you can see that with what I talked about with some of you can go out to Social Blade right now and look at my numbers, and you can get them up to like the last 90 days or something. And I am my numbers are almost zero now, but I literally only have the people that normally watch this show. I have no more new people watching coming into this channel, so they've cut it off, whatever pipeline. But it's 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 something that you have to experience, and it's really got to wig you out. Like, you've really got to know that, suddenly you were driving by and this apartment building was not there the other day. Just the other day it happened to me. I was heading to work, and I always take this one little area I know that a bunch of cars don't know, and it's this little off area, and it's this lot that was never worked on, and I never knew why the lot was always empty because where I'm at, I'm near a downtown area, and there was just this lot, and there was nothing ever there, and sure enough, the other day, there was this five-story apartment building, and it was like, okay, that was a big Mandela effect, and 2 years ago, I would have gotten out of my car, I would have, like, ripped my shirt off and run down the street, but now that I'm used to it, I went, "Yeah, okay." I stopped for a minute, I looked around, I saw the traffic on this street that was no longer my little side street to avoid, this four-way intersection downtown, and I was like, "Okay, then. Alright, I guess that's over with then, I guess." And it literally happened within, I'd say 48 hours. It went from semi-concrete and tall bladed grass that was kind of dead from the winter to, um, a vibrant apartment, like, community, and it was weird, and it was major, and normally, I would be, like, breathless getting on here if it was 2 years ago. "Oh my god, you can't believe what I just saw. Oh my god," and now I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, that's about right, yep," and I just kept driving, and it was, like, no big deal to me. But you can't convince people of that unless you're deep in ME and you get what's going on.
Exactly, because they'll come up with some excuse, even if the excuse doesn't make sense, just to kind of make themselves feel more comfortable in the situation. I think a lot of it is discomfort on the thought that you could be right, and the other part of it is such thick denial that they're not even going to entertain that, even though they sneakingly suspect you could be right. Because I think that if someone honestly thinks you're wrong, they're not going to have any intense reaction to you. It's going to be more kind of a lethargic reaction, like, oh,
Ex
okay, I don't think you're right. They'll be kind of disinterested, but that's not that's not what we get when we say these kind of things to the wider world. We get people who are genuinely upset, and you don't get genuinely upset unless there's something real there that's upsetting you. So to me, I think that there's something very strange going on in the unconscious. We spoke before about times when I talk to people and I almost brought up the Mandela effect, and then you turned around in conversation and made an excuse. And I could see the fear coming in people's eyes, and like they're almost like their unconscious mind reacting before I even said anything, and then backing down when I gave them, a ready-made ridiculous excuse so that we didn't have to go there. But you'll find that if you almost bring people up to the point of almost mentioning a Mandela effect, they'll physically react to what you're saying. So that tells me that this is something much deeper than we could really imagine on the surface level, because there's nothing else that like happens with. Nobody's going to unconsciously start freaking out about JFK or something. And not the JFK Mandela effect, but I'm saying, like, if you go into some other what you might call conspiracy theory or alternative thinking, no one's really going to panic on a physical level. They'll probably
Yeah,
just say, oh no, I listened to the news and the news said something different, and that's all
right.
the result you're going to get. But the Mandela effect is definitely different and set apart. And maybe that's why the big truther channels that are not affected don't like us that much or don't get involved that much, because it's, even in the truther community, very much set apart into its own thing.
Yeah, and I just wanna say in the chat here, the "I am the true Highlander," you've said things before that are, you're skirting to the political side of things, and you're mentioning, transgender things. "I am the true Highlander," and, I don't want this is not there's thousands of channels that will accommodate you in your beliefs, and I'm gonna let you have one more. I'm gonna warn you one more time before I ban you. I am the true Highlander. I am not hostile to Christianity. I am not hostile to your beliefs, but I am not going to let the chat be hijacked and have someone feel uncomfortable if they're Mandela affected. Now, there are plenty of Twitter feed, that exactly what and there's literally whole subcultures inside of YouTube that will probably get throttled like we are. And what I don't want, Highlander, is for you to be putting words into the chat that they are definitely scanning for, and we get mistaken for a channel that we are not. So I'm going to remove your comment, but I want you to know I'm removing your comment because you've got to understand the stakes. And this is like what I was talking about the other day, is the stakes are much higher and we all have to be responsible. Now, I'm not going to ban you because I don't think you're a bot and I don't think that you're a troll, but the stakes are high for all of us. And I don't need buzzwords and I don't want to deal with buzzwords. You know, the every single one of the words that I say and Chick says, you know, is going to be scanned now. And eventually they're going to get to these live chats. And not to mention, if there's someone in there that has an alternative lifestyle or a lifestyle that you don't like, I would like them to feel comfortable here if they're truly Mandela affected, especially if they can bring forth some evidence that can put forth the idea that the Mandela effect is real. That's my official stance because it's my channel. Now, I'm not going to advance someone's political agenda as a 50-50 detente that we can all come together as, sort of consider this a DMZ zone in terms of politics. This is pure Mandela effect. And the only time that I ever do come close to politics is talking about getting rid of the trolling and lecturing other big channels that are irresponsible, that I think we're all starting to pay the price for because of their irresponsibility, because they wanted clicks, or worse, they were saboteurs or they were paid shills themselves. So that's the only time. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to keep this in line, and I know that the channel is doubled in size, and I just want to just keep it in line. And to that person that I took away your comment, I'm just informing you, and I apologize if I've offended you, but I got to keep all of us afloat as long as possible before they take this channel away, and I've got a feeling they're going to do it. Sorry.
I I think it's a very difficult task to try and keep Google and YouTube at bay when it comes to trying to keep them away from a channel, especially a growing channel like yours.
Yep.
It's way more on the radar now because there's so many more people watching than there was before. It's kind of this impossible eggshell dance of, what's going to upset Google, what's going to upset YouTube. Like, is it safe to mention anything at all? Like, what are we allowed to talk about with? I'm just afraid of like buzzwords, like regardless of what context you're talking in, because the
Right.
algorithm will pick up on it. And if it's a machine, it doesn't care what context is. It'll say, oh, you're talking about this. Oh, you're talking about that. Whatever
Right.
it is.
And I have a very complex, broad set of political and financial opinions and geopolitical opinions that are very well defined, that I've defined over 20 years of being an adult, and I don't talk about them. I purposely don't talk about them here because I understand what special I'm trying to make this place be for all of us. So anyway, and I want all faiths to feel comfortable here for that experience, but not for anything else. And like I said, it's not as if you don't have a billion other channels to go to for that kind of stuff,
There are a lot of channels, and we have looked at before how different things are culturally and socially, since like the year 2000 versus the year 2019. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, back when, there was a certain amount of people interested in politics and everyone else wasn't. And opinions they were important, but it wasn't quite like today. Today is very much, what ideological stance do you have on this or that, or this or that, or this or that. But the Mandela effect cuts through all of that. It transects a massive amount of people. And
It
that's something
does.
that I've found about it is there's people from every kind of background, every kind of religion, every kind of faith, every kind of path that I speak to, regularly, due to the Mandela effect. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter what, whether you're on whatever side of whatever issue, there's going to be Mandela affected people. So to me, this is just a totally separate issue from the other arenas of the truth community and politics and all these other different things. And I'm kind of grateful for that because you get to talk to all kinds of people who are different to you. Whereas
Right.
in today's world, you mostly don't get to talk to people who are different to you. The second you disagree, then you guys can't be friends anymore. You can't talk to each other anymore. You're at war with each other, rar, ideologically. Um, but with the Mandela effect, it's like, oh no, that doesn't matter. We can talk to each other and be friends and talk about the latest shifts and the latest maps and the latest, things, no matter what the story is, because we're all in this exactly the same together, and it's awesome. It's like the one facet of uh, society in this part of the world at this time where none of the other issues matter and we can all come together. And that's one thing I definitely treasure about this.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I know just in the chat right now, people of way opposite persuasions, and I see them. I think it's really cool they're talking, and I think that's really awesome. And someone is mentioning something about political things. I'm going to check that, and I don't know who this person is, and I will 86 them. Okay, it's cool. Never mind. All right, so this mud flood thing in Tartaria. So let's get on to some Mandela effect stuff. 22 minutes into this. Hey, it's 2:22. So, right? So that's saying that's a signal. Start talking about ME stuff. Okay, this is what we're here for, people. Sorry. And they're actually accomplishing what they wanted. They took 22 minutes of our hour talking about but this stuff. So it seems that this mud flood thing, and I've watched a couple of videos that Agent Smith found about the mud floods in Tartaria and buildings that they're discovering on top of buildings of older buildings. And it's weird, man. It's weird. And talking about there's new Anatoly Fomenko books talking about these kinds of situations and rewritten histories. And Fomenko's right there in the mix with it. What do you think of this lost empire of Tartaria? My particular theory is that when we had that major shift, Tartaria was residue, or it was a real thing in another timeline, and right now parts of it or pieces of it or residue of it bled into the timeline, that the blended timeline that we have right now. um, and the mud flood somehow too is yet a third timeline, perhaps, and that too bled into this. And the mud flood could be part of what was in another timeline, the traditional biblical flood, but their linear concept of time is different than the one that we understand. So all there are is sort of ghost echoes of that mud flood and Tartaria. I don't think mud flood and Tartaria are related, other than the fact that they've found themselves into this particular timeline, perhaps.
I've had, yeah, so many different ideas about this. I was looking last night to try and find some more details about it, and it was not in the previous timelines. I saw excavation photos from France where it showed in Paris, buildings, as it, cities built on top of cities. And I spent enough time in Paris to know that that wasn't there. Like the catacombs were there, and there was, various railroads and things like that, but there was no if there was this massive Tartarian empire and there was all these massive mud floods that covered cities and then cities were built on top of them, especially if it happened as late as 1815, which is what some of the articles were saying, a lot of people would know about it, especially my mother, for one. She was like very much interested in history, and she would have told me immediately if any of these things had happened because I've gone to Paris with her. But there were obviously many other people who were very interested in the infrastructure of Europe and especially the old capitals of Europe. And there would have been museums about it. There would have been information on it everywhere. We would have heard of the mud floods. We would have heard of all these different things happening. And I throw Tartaria in there too, because that's something that there would have been museums about and that we would have heard of as well. I saw that CIA directive that I actually read out on the Lost and Found bin quite a while ago when Tartaria first showed up, that said, we need to rewrite the history and make it seem like Tartaria failed and all this kind of stuff. But one CIA directive from the 50s or whatever it was would not have erased the entire public's memory of this massive, massive empire. It was 300 million square feet when it first appeared. I don't know what size it is now because this Earth is a different size, and who knows what's going on with that. But the scale of it is still enormous, regardless if the square footage is different, because the measurements of the place keep changing, because the geo-shifting is very, very crazy right now. There would have been so much evidence of it. There would have been so many people talking about it. There would have been so many documentaries on it that I don't believe that it's something that we would have just heard of now if it was here all along.
Yeah, and there's this person, Greg Silverado, saying it's a basically a decline in knowledge. Well, you line where your 87-year-old grandmother understood Tartaria, but we don't, and that's kind of the point of some of these shifts is that Tartaria, it really is a brand new thing on the scene, and it was something that I've got to read. Anatoly Fomenko dedicated a whole book on it, so it's that big a deal to where it's that bizarre and that strange. And you've got to remember, we have built-in periods of time that we call like the Dark Ages that whenever they took that 1,000 years and decide to erase it or rewrite that 1,000 years in Western history is what Anatoly Fomenko suggests. Um, you know, that could have been the time of Tartaria. That could have been a time of who knows what. There's one idea that some people would consider especially blasphemous is that the modern day Catholic Church was exactly the way it was. They just reformatted some of the language into a more Abrahamic system, and that it continued on with the traditions that it's exactly was. Same with Martin Luther and the way in which the Reformation happened. Now, I don't know if that's exactly the case because obviously I have no proof. And part of Tartaria's problem is exactly what Anatoly Fomenko has been facing the entire time, and what I keep saying over and over again. If you start looking, just like if you do at the subatomic level to the quantum level and beyond that, if you keep looking at something too far, it crumbles and there's almost nothing there for you. And Anatoly Fomenko, he said basically all of Western history, particularly Western European history, was written by three people. By three people. And I have an earlier video that has all the references to those three or four authors. They were mostly Italian authors at the time. All of it. And then so when you take these sources that are 3 and 4 out claiming to be primary sources, if you really go to these universities and to these professors, they'll tell you that if you really twist their arm, they're not primary sources. They're not actually primary sources. And when you look for the primary sources, it's actually written by I think it even goes back to Josephus or maybe even before, but it's like 3 or 4 people. And even then, when you talk about Josephus, he's not even in the right time period. He's like 500 or 600 years off. So there you go.
I do also wonder if it is the past returning again, because we've seen so much, especially with the ancient supercontinents, knowledge of the ancient supercontinents coming out. I believe the last count was 7 supercontinents prior to Pangea are now apparently historical fact. And the oldest land on Earth is in Australia. There's part of the supercontinents apparently that is largely undisturbed, even though all the countries are part of the ancient supercontinents. But apparently, the oldest land they can find is in Australia right now. And with the differences we're seeing here, especially with the last shift that came in, was maps of Antarctica look incredibly different now. They're actually split, and I want to get one up to make sure that I'm saying this correctly. But Antarctica is turning back into what I believe it was in ancient times. I know it's a bit controversial because there's different theories about what Antarctica actually is, but just for the sake of argument and for the sake of talking about the ancient world coming back, the split between I believe it's split now into East and West Antarctica, and there's different countries running different sectors of it, and it's not even covered in ice so much that it's mysterious anymore. And I can't help but feel, I know that Australia isn't the land down under anymore, but it was once, and it would make sense that uh, Antarctica and Australia would be making a lot of movements now, and possibly even joining up with each other. Yeah, I've got the maps here, and just Google image search for Antarctica, and you guys will see it: East Antarctica and West Antarctica, and you can see
Wow.
a clear mountain range in the middle where it's probably going to split, and they could still be ice walls. It could still be, what we're talking about with that. I don't want to argue about the planet's shape with anybody. I just want to talk about the ancient supercontinents are on the move. They're changing. They're mapped out very distinctly here. There's ice on it, but you can clearly see the shape of the country. You can see the mountain ranges, and you can see the parts that are not covered in ice anymore. And it's looking very different than I've ever seen it.
It's insane. It's so crazy that it's changing so fast. And now just this week with this whole thing, and it's sweeping the whole, it's reverberating in the whole section of the conspiracy world that deals in this kind of historical stuff. And someone told me about, maybe there's a reference with Crow 777. So I know other channels perhaps are talking about these kinds of things. So this is no joke. I mean, this is something that has changed and it's big, but I think we have maybe a piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't have, but I wish they would pay more attention to us, is that a lot of this can be explained with Mandela shifts. And that's where a lot of the frustration, I say over and over again, with these historians or with alternative historians that are very good at what they do, even YouTube historians that are really good. This, if you would even just consider the Mandela effect, just consider it, and then line that up with a shift, with the timing of Antarctica, with the mud floods, with Tartaria, all of these things, it would help out so much.
Yes, and there's another major change too with the recent shifts is magnetic north has moved to Siberia.
Wow, are you serious?
I'm serious. And there's scientists are saying we don't know what to do, we don't know what's happening, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, yeah, all your compasses are going to be crazy now. That's seriously going to affect, travel and things of that sort. But maybe I don't know, maybe that's why the North Pole has been having such trouble, like on this timeline on this Earth. Like it doesn't have ice and it does have ice, and then it doesn't have ice and it doesn't know what it's doing, and it's just
Right.
ice floating on water, or it's, it hasn't been a continent with ice on it since the Sagittarius arm. It's either been floating ice or no ice at all. And I wonder if the fact that that's not even going to be the North Pole anymore is going to drastically affect not just that area of the world, but Antarctica splitting and possibly joining up with Australia again, or with indeed the movements of all the countries. If the magnetic north is now going to be in Siberia, then surely that would move the magnetic south as well into the Pacific Ocean.
And then, something like this too, you would wonder if something like this can hang there until it's waiting for a shift, perhaps, for it to do a flip, or how they talk about, whenever you have magnetic poles, they move really, really slow apparently, and then they get to like this point where that's it, they flip really fast, and then the earth is kind of turned upside down, and it's things are then chaotic. But I'm thinking about shifts, shifts like this could be part of the reason why, that would happen, is it could be really, really close and on the edge, and perhaps the shift itself having nothing to do with it being in Siberia. It's just perhaps there's also a reverberation process that happens with the shift that could possibly cause, magnetic north to go south and vice versa. Is that making? I have it in my head. Does that make any sense?
I think so. Do you guys get it? I'm asking the chat here in case they're confused.
I'm just saying, there's Mandela effects that we know, and then there's primary things that happen inside of a Mandela effect. Like what we all noticed, like a shift a couple weeks ago, and we knew the primary effects, and we talked about that. But I'm wondering if there's like side effects as well that we don't even think about, like magnetic north going to south, and we may blame that on the Mandela effect, but it could be just because we had a shift. We could have side effects that we're attributing to the Mandela effect, but I never even considered that till just now that you have like a medicine, it's like a side effect.
Yeah, there could be a lot of, because shifting is absolutely insane. So it wouldn't be far out of bounds to say there would be unintended and bizarre side effects to such a crazy. We don't even really understand shifting. Like, we feel the physical effects, we see physical change in the world, but
Right.
we're not sure exactly what is happening. It's almost like just putting reality in a blender and then pressing stop, and then blending it again, and then pressing stop, and blending it again, pressing stop. You don't know where anything's going to land, what anything's going to be, what's going to
Mhm.
stay consistent, and what's going to be completely different. One pattern we are seeing is, like I said a couple of times now, is the ancient world. And I think that maybe there was an ancient flood of mud that now has come into our present, just like we're seeing, this different activity with the poles, with Antarctica, with the geological shifting of continents. We're seeing everything move towards the past. All the countries are getting closer and closer together, and that's because they want to move into a Pangea type formation, which may sound too radical still to people, but with the amount of shifting that I have seen and documented for 2 years now, that's exactly what we're the pattern that's going on. Every single shift, they get closer and closer together, and there's less and less gaps between countries, and even less and less gaps between islands. Islands have all joined up and become, they're all in a line, or they're all in kind of a necklace kind of formation. They're not just randomly scattered all over the place. And I wouldn't even give it that long. I'd say maybe a couple of years until we're seeing a major difference in the continents that we know today. And I mean
You
like two
know,
or 3 years.
your Pangea thing, what you just said, you're talking about Pangea in terms of the geo shifts. Yeah, but we also have a Pangea with the past like you're talking about. The past, the past and if the past was a continent and the present's a continent and the future's a continent. I don't believe the future exists, but whatever. Most people do for some weird reason. But anyway, let's just play with the present and the past. Them moving together with Tartaria and the mud floods and these other things, and then the complications of we could call that sort of a dimensional Pangea or a like I don't know. I don't have the word for it because we don't have words for this, but it's the past like smashing into the present, just like, Sicily smashing into the boot. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I'm not sure if it's a side effect and an error of what's going on, or if this is exactly how it's meant to be. Um, I don't know anybody that's gone through this before. We're literally trailblazing this right now. I've heard of people like Al Biebik and stuff who had wild experiences with the Philadelphia experiment and with time travel, and he ended up in places that look very different, like different versions of North America where different histories have happened. But that's the closest thing that I can think of in my mind to what's going on with us right now. Except we're not intentionally, you know, doing anything. We're not getting into any kind of Tesla technology to try and time travel or anything like that. We're just sitting here, and the whole thing is changing around us. You're like speeding across reality while you're just sitting in your living room.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And one thing that Greg Serrato brought up was about alcohol being really weird these days. Actually, that's a good point. And a lot of things are really weird these days. Like you go into a mall and it's really weird. And I know Amazon's taking over everything. I get that. I get it. I get it. But just a lot of the things that would be considered traditional in everyday life are getting just they seem strange and either obsolete or they seem irrelevant now and these are things you normally had to do, but somehow our lives now have changed so much that, and again, I understand the technology, has changed a lot of that. But even like the senses or the pleasure that you got from it or the sense of community you got from it from different kinds of things, have changed. But yeah, I can see even right down to the alcohol itself. Um, the people I'm around, the way they use alcohol in terms of, like a community setting, even that is changing, and I'm sure that has to do look, if they're rewiring our heart from being on the left side to the middle and our skull is being changed, I think that, the pathways in our brain are changing enough that things like alcohol are gonna be handled differently, and then that could also explain things like we're having with different kinds of drug crises that we're having right now.
I think there is something very, I don't want to say artificial, but very weird and off going on. And for the past couple of years, I'm sure all of you have noticed this. It's not just that the people on YouTube say the same stories over and over and over again. It's that every news outlet you deal with is kind of on a loop where they just say the same things over and over and over again. And I originally attributed this to, oh, the political climate or, whatever it is. But I think this is something different than that. I honestly think that there's something really, really crazy going on, that it's almost like the news is frozen or it's on a loop or something like this. And it might be something to do with kind of the reality that we're living in right now and how we're perceiving all these different things that are happening around us. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed, like, we don't have the language for this, but um, all of our news outlets seem to be, it's not the same as it was before. I wonder if you guys were, watch the news a lot or watched your favorite YouTube channels a lot or whatever in earlier years, maybe, back in 2008 or 2009 or 2012 even, it was completely different. It seemed to be fresh news all the time. It seemed to be things were going in a very linear direction in one way or another. And now it's not. Now you're getting the same news that you got years ago, and it's just kind of the same language, same things going around and around and around on repeat. And it's very bizarre. There's so many things that don't seem to be moving forward. They seem to be just kind of going around and around. And I almost feel like we're going around and around with this shifting that we're doing, because we're, at least for me, I'm always in the Orion arm or the Orion spur or the Orion, something. It always seems to be following a particular pattern. I'm trying to figure out what the breadcrumb trail may be, because I'm not sure, is there something specific you have to figure out before you can move on from that onto the next part of whatever is going on here, the next revelations of reality, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. But it does, it's moving along, and there's about 4 or 5 layers of these different cross currents that are happening all at one time, and every single one of these layers of these particular cross currents, you've gotta understand that there's probably unintended or unknown, sort of, side effects is the best way I can put it, because you're right, we're trailblazing so hard right now with what we're talking about. There isn't really a language for it, but you've got the Pangea process happening with the geo shifts. I do believe you've got the pulse on that chick. The Tartaria thing that just came up. You've got the mud floods. You've got the crackdowns on information, which don't think that may have something to do with what we're talking about. I just thought of that perhaps. And it's not necessarily that they're attacking fringe thought. It's just that fringe thought may become mainstream out of necessity. And I'm not talking about fringe thought in terms of the accusatory stuff. I'm talking about the observational fringe thought, like what we're doing, and the introspective with stuff. But all of that is changing immediately and in such bizarre and personal ways for every single person here. And think about it this way. I just had to put that title up, and I bet 90% of the people that are regulars in this knew exactly what I was talking about, even if they had only heard about it briefly. Like I saw the one video. It was so strange, chick. I saw the one video, and I saw that it was flamenco, or the one video about the mud floods in Tartaria and all that, from what Agent Smith sent us on Twitter, and I watched it. I got maybe halfway through, and the weirdest thing was that it's just now dawning on me, and I'm actually kind of freaking out, is I'm realizing I knew it. By instinct, I knew all of it, and I almost in a weird way, those buildings that were built on top of other buildings, I knew, and because I've lived in some of these bigger cities before, and I saw that all the time where you would go on a sidewalk and you would see that little, brick archway, that they would put on old buildings, and the sidewalk would be, curved down, like, maybe in certain parts of San Francisco, but certainly parts of New York City, you would see tons of that, and you knew it wasn't a basement or a basement, loft or apartment. It was just they built a building on top of another building, and it was the weirdest thing, and I just knew it. It was real, and there were times where deep in a really big city, there will be times when they will rip out a tall building or an old building, and you'll be able to look into a really big ditch, and you'll be able to see sort of the footprint of a what they're going to put in a skyscraper or something. And every now and then you'll be able to look over, and you'll see on the bottom of a lot of buildings, you can see other structures. And it never dawned on me was they're that great of a geo shift between the moment I'm looking right now and when people were walking on in a flat surface in and out of that building that I'm seeing that's 10 and 15 feet underground and was built. And how did they do that? They built, a 10 or 20-story building on top of a brick building. And now it's coming to me and I'm like, this is weird. It's weird.
That is strange that you saw that, like, oh, it's so weird that sometimes you see timelines that just come up like years and years in the past, because of course this thing isn't linear, our perception is linear, so it's kind of extra confusing. Personally, like when I saw building work and I saw things going on in the old heart of Dublin back in the day,
Mhm.
I used to see the foundations of the buildings. That's why I'm so shocked about this. Is the really old cities and really old places that I've been to. When I'd see building work, I would always see the foundation structures. I haven't seen the buildings built on top of buildings, and it shocks me because these super old places, you would think that would definitely be somewhere that you could have built buildings on top of buildings, and it would have been forgotten about, because so much time would have passed and maybe it wasn't
Mhm.
particularly publicized or whatever. But then when they go to knock the buildings down or they go to, dig the whole place up, you should be able to see the evidence. And I didn't see that. So wherever I was, I don't know what's going on with that because I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. Um, so this whole thing is so strange. The question is always, why are you seeing certain perceptions of reality and other people are seeing other things? And are you both standing in kind of the same space looking into different timelines, or are you both in different timelines? um
And yet and even more interesting, take the idea of, a traditional, old buildings, ancient buildings, and you have to dig down 10, 15, 20 feet into the ground, okay? And you have to do a professional excavation of it, and you find it and everything. Now that we're talking Mandela effect, the traditional belief of, well, the ground shifted or whatever it was, the sands of time just sort of blew over these things, and the reason why these buildings are 10, 15, 20, 30 feet below ground, and they used to be ground level, was the earth just slowly changed over time. Well, when you have mud flood buildings and you have Tartaria and you have empty, like Agent Smith was saying, you have empty trains from some weird timeline that are buried underground, and you have empty pictures, modern enough where there's empty cities, big cities, and not a soul in them. That's or drawings too of older cities. I mean, you start talking about very strange timelines. Really, really weird timelines.
and it kind of, like, at least for me, it confuses the connection with the past, because when I used to imagine the past, of course I would imagine it taking place on the map that I was familiar with. And now it's like, okay, well, if things as giant as Tartaria were hidden either by the Mandela effect or by the modern governments for unknown reasons, whatever difference that would make on the level to the average citizen, I don't know. But to see that things like that could be hidden and that the countries could be located in different places or be different countries or be we have no idea from a Mandela effect Orion arm point of view what the past looked like. It could literally could be entirely different land masses with entirely different empires and entirely different everything than we were ever taught. So I feel more disconnected from whatever the history was than ever. I
Mm.
feel like it's beyond because it's very possible to hide a couple of things, but it never even occurred to me up until I started dealing with this that it could be an entirely different world, and maybe not even that long ago. Maybe we're not even talking thousands of years when it was an entirely different world, unrecognizable in comparison to this one.
Yeah, could you imagine a complete, rewriting of history instead of what Faminka's thinking of 4 or 500 years ago? This happened way, way sooner. And the reason why it happened way sooner was because of something we can't even begin to understand why. Now, I'm going to put on the table that these are Mandela effects, all of these, and they're from timelines where it's like residue, like where you'll see the check. It's just now the Mandela effect, unfortunately, I think it's I think it's amplifying. I think it's getting louder and it's getting bigger. And I think the Mandela effect is actually growing, perhaps, because these are things that are not tiny anymore. I mean, we're talking mud floods and ancient empires in other worlds that it's like this idea of Atlantis. We've been looking for Atlantis now for who knows how long. And out of nowhere comes Tartaria, and it's from the coast of California all the way to Japan. And it's on different maps that look really weird, and it's very strange. All of it is very strange.
It is extremely um, I don't even like we're having trouble here because the language for this, if it did exist in the past, it got completely forgotten, and we got to reinvent the wheel here and try and come up with the language for this kind of vast rearranging of physical reality. I'm not even sure how or when we're going to be able to come up with terms that fully encompass just how broad and how sweeping these things are. But for the meantime, um, I'm just just completely. It's almost like watching a computer simulation of what they imagine the continents were like. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, where you see like the ancient continents together and then you see them drift apart. It's almost like watching that, but in reverse. Like everything's coming together, but it's
Yeah.
going in ways that we never knew about. And even the shape of Antarctica is completely different than what it was before. Someone in the chat said that the shape of Antarctica now looks like a brain cortex, and I thought that was kind of strange but interesting. I mean, I could kind of see that. It's got that kind of long tail that it never had in my timeline. That on some maps, some ancient maps, that tail of Antarctica actually joined up with the tip of South America in
Yeah.
this Orion place, which also was not a thing for me. But that would obviously have serious changes on the past too if those continents were connected.
But yeah, you've got that Pangea for the geo thing, and I think we need to invent a Pangea for timelines. And I think we had like a Pangea shift of timelines. And the mud floods in Tartaria could be something that we could play around with trying to create something, I don't know, something for that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's so bizarre and cutting edge. I don't know what to say. It's just, but I like the idea of a Pangea. Only it's Pangea. You have the Geo Pangea, and then you have a dimensional Pangea. Wow, that would be terrifying. The past, you not just a past and present Pangea and it coming back together, but you have like that would almost like be the moment of creation, really. You would have different dimensions and timelines and the past and present all going back to, because if you thought about it, if the universe expanded and then it implodes, at the moment of implosion, there would not just be, right? Not just be physical matter coming back together. It would almost be rewinding the tape of time potentially, with the dimensions crashing back into each other. And, this could be the beginning of that, and we slowly start seeing weird things pop up everywhere that people just won't be able to deny eventually.
I mean, at this point, they shouldn't be able to deny it, but their memories go along with whatever the latest thing is. So it's very difficult to wake them up. I don't know why that's happening either. That's kind of very confusing. But I will say, looking at Dale Dufay's work, he does maps and geoshift stuff as well. And he's from a slightly different version, but he still has a lot of interesting stuff to say. His view on kind of a Pangea of a larger version is that he noticed that the closer to the core of the Milky Way we are, the smaller the planets are, and the
Right.
more Pangea-esque the countries are. But the further you go towards the edges of the Milky Way, the larger the planets, the Earths, I should say, not the planets, the larger the Earths are in circumference, and the more spread out the countries are. So it
Huh.
makes me wonder, because he was talking about on the very edge there of the Sagittarius arm, there's way more arms of the Milky Way. So there's 4 arms in here where the Orion arm is, because that's as far as we're able to figure out. But way out there where the Sagittarius arm is, there's like 6 or 7 different arms. There's all kinds of different arms with more and more Earths and more and more. And I wonder, like, the further you go out, how big does the planet get, and how spread out do the countries get, and how weird does it all get? I mean, I know we're on the opposite trajectory of going closer and closer towards the center of the Milky Way, back to that spark, back to that moment of creation. And we're watching the planet's life in reverse, and we're watching Pangea coming back into existence. And now we even have the ancient floods playing us a visit. So I kind of think if we keep going along this track, that maybe we could learn way more about the origins of the world.
Yeah, that would be really, what a way to learn a history lesson this way. You literally start to learn it firsthand and to wait, I just need a minute. That would be nuts. That would be so over the top. Wow. Hey, oh, look what time it is. Oh my gosh. Well, before we wrap up, any parting words?
Yeah, I don't think it gets much bigger than this adventure, and I think we're trailblazing into directions that we never even dreamed of. So I don't think it can get much bigger or more bombastic than what we're dealing with here.
No, totally. And it was a very odd week. Everybody, I threw in the link for the YouTube crackdown. So if you're it's going to affect you too if you're not a creator, if you're just a sub, because creators like Chicken, myself, and this show, we won't be in your recommended lists. You'll have to go out and find it, or you'll have to somehow find us. But what I'm trying to do, and I've created an unlisted video, and I've got an email now that I created specifically for the Mandela Effect channel, and it's called if you and I'm going to open it up now to not just the video, the requesting of the video, which there's certain instructions you have to go through in order to get the video, but it's the name of it's ME 2012 RULZ, like rules all day. So ME 2012 RULZALLDAY at Gmail at Yahoo.com. I did Yahoo on purpose because it would be off of Google's platform. That's why I did Yahoo. I was going to go with MSN, but I thought Yahoo was a bit more stable, because I know that they buy other companies and they're still making money. So, not that Microsoft isn't, but anyway, so if I'm trying to maybe I'd like to begin the process of having a backup way in which we all can kind of keep up with one another, and I think this email will be the first way, in case the channel is ever pulled. That way, you have it, you can communicate to me, and then that way we have a central hub for all of us, for people that are really hardcore about this show or the channel itself or me or Chick or whatever. There's a place to go now, and we'd be able to communicate to people. And what we'll be able to do is switch the show over to Chick's channel in case I'm ever put under, or in case we both are, we'll be able to communicate to core people that are interested, if we even have to go over to an entirely new platform if these crackdowns get much worse. I don't know where it's going and where it's at, with all of this. Another way, obviously, is Chick and myself. Obviously, you can. We always push. We're on Twitter. I love Twitter. I love the way you're able to do research and interact with people. I'm at I SMQAI. I'm at AI_SMQ, which a while ago apparently that flipped. I don't remember that, but people assured me anyway. But I'm at AI_SMQ. And Chick, where are you at again on Twitter?
Uh, at Chick Effect,
At Chick Effect, all one word.
all one word.
All one word. And I'm starting to put in some of these fun comments about me, snarky stuff about me, saying that, like, I just put in another comment just real quick saying that I sound like Casey from Enter the Stars. Someone said I sounded like Ferris Bueller, and it's just starting to become, to me, it's kind of a running joke now. And Chick, she had a really cool meme of Ferris Bueller about that. But I apparently sound like, I've literally been compared now to about 100 different people, my voice. But I'm not Casey from Enter the Stars. I know the channel, I know of the channel, but I'm not this person, and I'm not anyone else other than I'm claiming to be who I am, because I'm well, one, I'm me, but two, this is my only channel. This is it. So I'm only me. So that's it.
I
Anyway,
thought that was the best one. They're like, he's definitely Matthew Broderick, just Matthew Broderick. I'm like, what? That's
that
the
how classic that would be, though. You take a star at that level who had a movie that was like huge with culture, and they're like on YouTube just ripping it up with everybody else. That would actually be that would actually be pretty funny.
that would be hilarious if you're like, actually, guys, I'm a big Hollywood star, and
Yeah,
everyone like,
totally.
what's going on? But people have just the craziest. It's as if no one's able to differentiate between voices anymore. They just think you're everybody under the sun, and I don't think you sound like any of these people. And I don't know what the heck is going on.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? And people have always, since I've gotten on this, no one's ever commented about my voice until I got on this platform, and I guess because you can't see me, but my picture is out there if you look for it. It's just, it's now I've started to take down my pictures though more and more, because the show's grown, the heat's come on, and it's just, it's weird, man. You know, it's weird.
Everyone's saying your voice sounds so familiar. There must be something familiar about your voice because everybody's like, it sounds like this guy, sounds like that guy, even in the chat right now, and they know that it's not. They know that it's you. But
Yeah. Yeah, I promise you I'm not another person on another channel. This is my only channel, I promise you. This is it. This is I trust me, with the amount of work I put into this channel, you this is all I got time for. Between this and a full-time job, this is all I have time for, period. So, all right, well, we're over. If I'm bumped off, there's the email, and then there's Chick's channel. Just go type in Chick and Mandela Effect. You'll find it. I've typed it in. I've typed it in as me and as someone else, and I can find her channel. And I'll send it through Twitter, and I'll send it through the email here. And if you're still interested in the unlisted video, the demand was much more than I anticipated, and I had to work on sending them out all yesterday and all this morning, because I'm doing them manually one by one. There's about 4 people didn't follow the instructions. I didn't send them to you. If you haven't gotten them yet, I've already sent out all the requests, and And if you haven't gotten it, resend to me either the name right, because then I'll know you're not a troll or a bot, and then or whatever that, and you can just follow simple instructions. And also to send me the link to your YouTube channel. I need to see it. The only other people that I let go on that are people that I know really, really well. So anyway, that's it. Do you have anything else, Chick?
Uh, I think we covered all the bases pretty well. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us here this week on the Lost and Found bin.
Awesome. That's how we end it. All right, take it easy, guys. See you next week. Bye.